The following pre-recorded political program is sponsored by TV for Goldwater Miller on behalf of Barry Goldwater, Republican candidate for President of the United States.
It's considered one of the greatest political speeches of all time, and it was given by the man who would later be known as the great communicator, Ronald Reagan.
I have been permitted to choose my own words and discuss my own ideas regarding the choice that we face in the next few weeks.
On Tuesday, October 27, 1964, Ronald Reagan spoke to a national television audience on a show called Rendezvous with Destiny. He was a 53-year-old actor, a union leader, and a GE spokesman. His speech, A Time for Choosing, was designed to help the campaign of Barry Goldwater a week before the presidential election.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. We will keep in mind and remember that Barry Goldwater has faith in us. He has faith that you and I have the ability and the dignity and the right to make our own decisions and determine our own destiny.
Using only minimal note cards, Ronald Reagan spoke for nearly 30 minutes, giving a powerful speech that helped launch his political career.
No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size, so government programs once launched never disappear. Actually, a government bureau is the nearest thing to eternal life we'll ever see on this earth.
In his autobiography, Ronald Reagan wrote that he went to bed after the speech that night hoping that he didn't let Barry Goldwater down. The reality was, the electrifying speech elevated him to the national stage, and he quickly became a political sensation. To this day, 60 years later, his words and ideas from this speech still resonate with many Americans.
This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those founding fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy.
The speech raised over $1 million for the Goldwater campaign. Unfortunately, Barry Goldwater didn't win the presidency, but it did launch Ronald Reagan's career. Just 2 years later, he became governor of California, winning almost 58% of the vote. He followed that by becoming a two-term president, winning by landslides in both 1980 and 1984. Many historians agree it all started with A Time for Choosing.
That particular speech, there might be something of interest to you about this, that I had made that speech statewide. And then one night, getting very close to the end of the campaign, I addressed a fundraising group at the Coconut Grove in Los Angeles. And a little group at a table, some pretty prominent Republicans, caught me on the way out and asked me if I would come over to the table, their table, for a few minutes and sit down with them. They broached the idea to me that if they raised the money to pay for it, would I make that speech on television? Mm-hmm. And I said, yes, I'm very happy to, because it had been well received throughout the state. I'd seen it given to many audiences. And so they bought the time. I can't remember how many millions of dollars had already, before the night was over, been pledged. But it is true that it was that then that made a group of Republicans think that I could bring the party together.
Thank you very much.